Hello, and welcome to another episode of Industry Celebrities. My name is Kimberly Scott. Industry Celebrities is a podcast where I interview industry professionals in any industry and where I ask them questions about their industry and or their passion, and where they share just a little bit of additional advice to their younger self, which I feel is very helpful to us all. If you want to tune in to other episodes, you can do so by going to thatkimberly.com/convo to choose which platform you prefer to listen, either iTunes, Spotify, Google, YouTube, you name it. You can choose where you want to listen. So now that I got that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and introduce my guest today. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Bob Sager. Did I say that right, Bob?
You did.
Yay. Well, thank you for joining me.
Well, Kimberly, it's my pleasure to be with you today.
Well, I do appreciate you taking out the time and visiting with me a little bit. So let's get started by telling listeners about yourself and what industry you're in.
Well, I'm in the consulting and training industry, and I know that's kind of nebulous. The consulting and training I do is on two things: thinking bigger and thinking more innovatively, and not just for fun, but thinking more innovatively to come up with solutions to practically apply in business.
That's always needed, that's for sure. Helps probably people get out of their one-track mind, if you will.
Well, people have, just like in every other walk of their life, people develop habits.
Yes.
And thinking is definitely that way. And when you're used to thinking about a situation in a certain way, the default is to get into your comfort zone of thinking. And so what we do is train people on how to break through that and how to break those thinking patterns so that they could see new possibilities.
Well, I definitely know that's needed in business for sure. If you don't continue to evolve in a business, or even in your professional career for that matter, it doesn't always end up where it's a good thing. You can be stale, be negative. There's so many bad things that can occur if you're not constantly evolving, in my opinion anyways.
Well, I think the smartest individuals and smartest companies are those who continually grow and
Yes.
continually improve, because the reality is, if you're not, as a company or as an individual, growing and improving, the world doesn't stand still. So you're not going to stay stationary. You're going to fall behind.
Yes, definitely. Well, how did you get your start in this industry?
Boy, Kimberly, that's kind of a long and winding road. I will give you the short version. I started off my career in life by working full-time and going to college full-time, never ever thinking that I wanted to do really anything entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
But through a lot of circumstances, some of my own making and some of others choosing,
Mm-hmm.
I ended up going into sales. And so I was in sales in the automotive industry, and then in the residential real estate industry. And then I spent 17 years, some people would call this sales, I called it more consulting, in the financial services industry, and working with clients there. And then some of the things that I experienced there really led me into the work that I'm doing now for the last 11 years or so. So, like I said, that's an extremely short version of it, but there's a lot in between the lines.
Yeah, well, it definitely gives you a well-rounded perspective, I think, from especially the car sales industry is tough. And so is the financial advising industry,
Without question. I don't know what the statistics are now, but I can tell you that long term, of 100 people that start in the financial industry, there probably aren't 2%, maybe 3% of them that make it 10 years or more.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So it definitely teaches you some mental toughness and some persistence.
Definitely. I did copier sales for about a year and a half, and that's where I learned my stick-it-to-itiveness and follow-up stockingness in sales. So both very tough industries. So what do you enjoy about what you do? What's your most favorite thing about what you do?
I'll tell you what my favorite thing is about what I do is when I see the light bulb go on for someone.
Mm.
Now, I do training work and I do consulting work. And in both circumstances, whether I'm developing a strategy that helps a company move their sales forward in volume and margins on those sales, or whether I'm training on the methods that I use, to develop those strategies, either way, there's always a light bulb that goes on for people.
Yeah.
And, when a consulting client says to me, this strategy you developed for us is amazing, Bob, and we never would have thought of this in a million years. That is so rewarding. And on the training side, when people are going through this training and when they're discovering things about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
that discovering capabilities that they weren't even aware that they had, and when they sort of get it, and you can tell by the change in their physiology that they feel differently about themselves. That is very cool.
Way more confidence, a bigger smile, more positivity, all of it, I'm sure, is great.
Well, absolutely, because when you think about it, when are you most likely to take the boldest action on things? It's when you have confidence that you can get a result. And so when you can train people in a way that helps them have more confidence in their competence, then that's a pretty big deal for them.
Yeah. And rewarding for you, like you said. I can see how that can be exciting when that light bulb goes off.
Extremely.
Well, awesome. My hat goes off to any trainer, consultant that is able to, I do know consulting is a tough gig where, getting others to understand and get outside their box, it can be kind of difficult at times. So my hat goes off to you that you're able to, stick at it and find those companies and those people that you're affecting in that way to help them grow and be either a larger company or a better person in their profession.
Right.
So
right, absolutely.
My one standing question for my podcast is what you would tell your younger self.
Oh, there's no question in my mind. I would tell my younger self to think bigger, a lot bigger. And I'll tell you why, because it just for me is the same as for everybody. Almost to a person, the people that I've dealt with so vastly, and this is true of companies too, they so vastly underestimate their capabilities. And so if I look back on myself 20 years old, early 20s, I would definitely tell myself earlier, because I don't have a problem with thinking big now, but I did then.
Yeah.
And if you've never tried to do it, right, and you've never been exposed to people who do think and expect bigger, then it's kind of natural to just sort of, you're just sort of trying to feel your way along in life. But when you start thinking bigger, you start expecting bigger. And when you start expecting bigger, you start acting bigger. And that's where your results come from. But it all starts with thinking.
Yeah. Positive power of thinking. Yes. Mindset and being able to see the vision, however big it is, and get yourself to that vision.
Without a question. And obviously, positive thinking has to be coupled with positive action. Mm-hmm. But if you're not expecting a positive result, then you're probably not going to take a lot of positive action.
Correct. I agree with that. That's like when you ask somebody to go ahead and step here and try and hit this ball. Oh, I'm just going to miss it. And then they don't hit the ball. Well, you said in advance you were going to miss it. So.
And Kimberly, whatever we tell ourselves over and over and over, whether it's out loud or just we think it, that becomes our reality. That becomes our truth.
Absolutely.
So, why not tell yourself good things?
Yes. I agree. Well, tell my listeners about how they could get a hold of you and, possibly read up or listen to anything that you have going on.
Probably the best way to reach out to me is via LinkedIn. I don't know if I'm the only Bob Sager on LinkedIn, but and I don't know if you have show notes for your shows, but that's the best way. I spend the vast majority of my social media time on LinkedIn, and people are welcome to message me. And I've got a lot of links to media and articles and things like that on my LinkedIn profile. People can sort of learn the rest of the story that way.
I remember that broadcaster, the rest of the story.
Right, right.
Well, then I highly recommend everyone to reach out to Bob, and his last name is spelled Sager. So thank you so much again, Bob, and check out your LinkedIn profile. And remember to hit the subscribe button on wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it be YouTube, iTunes, Anchor, or you can just follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Instagram, all those great places. But until next week, stay positive and keep growing. And thanks again, Bob.
My pleasure, Kimberly.